Hey, today's video, we're going to talk about how redoing your site and then launching your site, redesigning it because it's old, or you just think that you can do better but having an updated site. Everybody updates their site at some point. I'm going to tell you how that's going to affect your PPC campaigns, both on Google as well as Facebook. What you can expect going in so you don't panic, freak out, start to unravel your PPC strategy, or just in general put yourself through hell where you don't have to, and kind of then at least if you know something's going to change, what it is, so you'll be ready for it. Of course, in terms of that, also be ready for what kind of sales hit you might have to put up with, which I'm just going to tell you up front, most of the people that do, when I say most, I'm talking about 98% of you guys who have PPC campaigns already that you're relying on so many sales coming in are going to do a site update. You're going to take a hit in sales. I'm going to tell you about how much you could expect to get, of course, take a hit on sales, and ultimately how to recover from it. What are all the details with this? Why does it happen? All of that will be covered on today's video in a nutshell or at a very high level. So with that said, I will get into the content here. Everyone has to do an update to their website time to time. The average, time people do an update to their website, of the hundreds of clients I've had over the last 15 years or whatever, average is about 3 to 7 years that people update their site. Why? Because it's like your kitchen or a bathroom. The style gets outdated, so people update their site because of that. The site looks old. After it looks so old, sometimes, in a lot of markets it doesn't matter, but in some it does certainly matter. It will reduce the amount of trust you're going to get. And also the sites basically can have more functionality once new things come out and that kind of stuff, and of course can work faster if you switch to new coding standards. But anyway, when you update your site, just know that your PPC campaigns on Google, but also on your Facebook campaigns for a period of time, will fluctuate anytime that you do the change to your site. And the reason for that is because Google's got to, in short, reevaluate what it is that your site's all about, how it performs, who likes your website, who doesn't like your website, because they have a lot of that data about, about who likes your website, who doesn't like it, how it compares to your competition's website, before you make the change. And when they make the change, they don't automatically assume, at least all the way automatically, that your website that you're coming out with is better. Why? Because Google or Facebook, if they assumed they give everybody, the benefit of the doubt, then they would lose a bunch of money, kicking out the established players with known websites that are known to perform well, where they could run those when they run, most websites when they come out, or just most landing pages don't do as well as the best, landing page or website they had on file that they know they could send traffic to. So they would have less overall, they care about how the website performs, because they want their users to like clicking on ads, get a good experience from clicking on ads, and they're going to have a less ideal environment for their users if they're going to push hard the new websites or new landing pages before they know how to perform, and see that they deliver are at least as good as your competition. And so they'll slowly test out anything new, whether it's a new campaign, in this case a new website or a new landing page that you're taking people to now, slowly, and they'll penalize you in terms of what you have to pay per click and that kind of thing. And of course it runs on, and ideally, because every site now, Google's going to have to, you're going to figure out which customers are ideal to send you your website, given people would buy from one website, but they wouldn't buy from another after you update it. And Google's got to figure out which people to send you a little bit all over again, even though the offer that you have is the same. Depending on what your website set up like will dictate what type of people that should be sent to your site and which should not. It's the reason why different websites convert differently. You'd have XYZ person here would buy from you if your site was this, versus if it's this, they won't buy. And then they look at all the people that now would likely buy or are buying from your new site, and then figure out what all their traits are, so they know when they send other traffic to you what type of traffic to send versus what type of traffic they were needing to send to you before. So anyway, it all has to do and is revolving around the Google and Facebook's algorithm that determines whose ad gets seen, and then from there, what they're charging each person to encourage people that are to do a good job, getting people to, ultimately, if you're going to buy traffic, convert on the site, which it indicates that you did a good job serving their users, and the user had a good experience. And basically with that, reward you with a lower price. But then they can't do that until they know it's better. Every site's different, and they assume, since most people do a poor job, that you're doing a poor job until you prove them otherwise. That's just how a PPC rolls. The average time it takes for Google, though, or Facebook to kind of reevaluate your new website and make sure that it's as good, or just in general is as good as your current website, is 60 to 120 days after your site is kind of redone. Okay, so you can prepare for that going in. You redo your site, you launch it. You're going to have 60 to 120 days usually where there's going to be negative performance, regardless if that website or landing page you're taking people to is actually better or, of course, worse. So anyway, if you're prepared for that going in, of course you have to update your site. There's nothing you could do. It's like ripping a Band-Aid off. You're going to have worse sales for a while, at least from your PPC traffic, which is why if you're going to do a new website, respectively, you want to make darn sure that the website converts better. Otherwise, that negative effect of your sales dipping because you're now getting charged more per click, because basically you earned a low cost per click before by having a good site, and then Google and Facebook knowing that, now they don't know how your site performs, so you're getting charged what everybody else gets charged in the beginning. And of course they don't know what's the best traffic to send to you, given you have a different style of site now, like I said. And so respectively, what I always advise people to do is put you have your website and try to send, if you can, 10% of your traffic to the new site. There's ways to do that and see how it converts before switching over 100% over to the new site. If you don't know how to do that, maybe you talk to your web developer, but that guarantees that if you're going to have the negative downward trend in your sales for 60 to 120 days, that at the end of it, it'll make up for it. If your website converts even 10% better, that 60 to 120 days dip in sales, as long as, of course, you got ways to make up for it, to make sure all your bills are paid, and you've got overhead you have to take care of and all that, you need so much volume, makes up for it, or what have you. So you don't update a site for, your goal of updating the site should to be making it convert better. You got to actually, to make it realistically pay off, we'll just say, because of that negative effect on your sales short term, because of the site update and the algorithm not knowing how to handle your site now. The reason you will lose money every time with your site updates is because Google Ads runs off of an algorithm, and even though your site is actually better, their algo does not know after they test. Their algo does not know that until after they test it out, and so respectively, that 60 to 120 days, as I mentioned, is basically the normal time frame they kind of need to reevaluate your site. Is basically it. Which is why your sales are down for 60 to 120 days after you rehash the site. Now, there's a couple ways that you lose sales, as I mentioned. Assuming your site converts as good, you're still going to have the algorithms on Google or Facebook figure out which people to send to you that convert well on your new type of site. That's one thing. And then also they're going to charge you more per click, assuming your site earned a low cost per click because it converts at a good rate before. And with that, you introduce the new site, it's going to be the cost per click you paid when you first started out before, or maybe not quite exactly what you paid before, because there is things such as account level quality score on Google or account level relevancy score on Facebook, where they kind of look at all the campaigns that you ran before and they judge any new campaigns or any new landing pages you have, how well they will do based upon how well that you've normally done as an advertiser before. But still, even if you've had a good history overall with Google, with Facebook, they're going to charge you close to what you would have started out paying anyway, assuming you didn't have any history and this was a new campaign, whereas half of what they charge you is based upon how good your landing page converts. And so of that part of the algorithm that determines what you pay, they're basically going to charge you what everybody else pays starting out as they evaluate, or close to it, even if you have a good history with them, because the landing page is so different, and they're taking a big risk sending a bunch of their traffic, if you will, to a new unproven page. That's just kind of how it rolls, I guess, is how to say things. But now, how much does the cost per click go up when you actually give them a new site to evaluate? In general, the cost per click will rise by 0.5 to 3x when you do this, depending on how good of a job you did prior to introducing this new page. And in other words, how low, because if you do a really, really good job, in other words, on your landing page, you can pay half to a third of what you were paying before if it converts super, super well. But in general, beyond that, your cost per click is going to go, well, let's just say it will go up a lot, okay, if you've earned a good rate with them before. And generally speaking, if you're making money with your PPC campaign, that means you did a good job, therefore your rate would have went down. But depending on how much it's went down in the beginning will depend on how much your cost per click will go up. Those are directly linked. Okay, and this is assuming that you want to get the same amount of impressions. So basically what I'm trying to mention there is you may actually pay the same cost per click, but really what will happen is you'll get less impressions while Google or while Facebook tests your new landing page or your website out. So in other words, you were paying $5 a click before, you were getting shown, you were getting 50,000 impressions per month from your campaigns overall. As Google or Facebook is reevaluating your site or your landing page that you're taking people to, which is basically the same thing, instead of 50,000 impressions per month at $5 per click, you'll get 15,000 impressions at $5 per click for the first month after you do that, because it's half, literally again, half the algorithm that decides if they want to show your ad or not is that landing page. So like half of all the data that they've had since you've started the campaign is now gone. And PPC is most of what making money is about after you have a firm foundation of an ad and a landing page, is the history that they've built up about how to run your stuff. The algorithm's way more sophisticated than you think. They profile all the people that they have, all their users. They know their traits, their behaviors, and so forth. And every time you get a sale or a lead and you have the tracking set up, it knows how to get you one at a little bit better rate every single time you get a conversion. And the people that make a lot of money with PPC are really just had invested in a lot of data. And even with the best landing page, the best ad, it took years to build up the data to really, really clean up with the PPC that they were doing. So anyway, though, if you need, going back to my previous example, if you need 50,000 impressions per month, no matter what, because you got all this overhead, essentially what you can do is just raise the cost per click, okay? Just to keep it simple, we'll talk about Google. But with that, to get the same impression share, and therefore the amount of impressions or number of times your ads shown to be the 50,000 per month instead of the 15,000 per month, you may have to raise your cost per click by 3x or 3 times what it was before you made the site update just to get the same 50,000 impressions per month. That's where the cost per click can go up. If you could take less cost per click, or sorry, less impressions that you had before, then you could keep the same cost per click. Your ROI doesn't change. If you need the volume, your ROI will go down because you'll have to bid more to get the same amount of impressions. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Of course, part of what affects your sales again is you're losing half the value of PPC is just you're paying for the algorithm to know what not to do, so they know what to do in the future. And your site's new, therefore they have to see what type of users. Maybe males converted well on your past site, but now males don't convert so well. Well, they got to figure that out. And so you have to build up a history on this new site so they can see, again, what type of people that opposed to as what worked well before to get a conversion at the cost per conversion you want or cost per sale you want, which ones now will do that. And you have to restart from the beginning again with that site being updated. Respectively, the more your site's changed, the more they'll have to learn. If your site was basically the same and you just switched platforms, maybe you switched from WordPress to Shopify, basically they won't have to, they'll be able to look at the data they had before, do that, and then just see if fundamentally is the site, similar, and they'll make conclusions that basically they can use most of the data they had before, just not all of it. And but with that said, some people think even though the website looks the same, the performance and with the algorithm, and due to the algorithm having to, the algorithm on Google and Facebook will just know that the page is the same. No, not at all. Because the part of what the page they're looking at is all the web code, the HTML code. So even though the site looks literally identical as the old site, but you just switched because you wanted to do Shopify instead of WooCommerce, their algorithm they don't know. It's just a computer. It's kind of stupid in a way. They don't know that visually it looks the same per se, or at least they don't, based upon the testing that I've done. And you would think that somehow they would be able to visually snapshot, like with their Google image, what they can do with that, how they can find images that are similar to another image that you want to find matches for using Google Images. They don't do this with the landing pages. If they see something that's coded differently, they assume it's a different website. Okay. So with that, it maybe not take as long to get back to where you were in terms of how many sales you can generate at the cost per sale you need or cost per lead that you need, given that the site performs identically and kind of the algorithm can figure that out fairly quickly. But in the beginning, it will need to figure out that the site is pretty much the same because it can't tell visually what's different. It just looks at the web code that the website itself is built from or built upon. Okay, so respectively. With that said, if your new site is converting worse than before, you've got another 120 days, 60 to 120 days to go through potentially to get back to where you were, but usually it's only 30 days if you're lucky, if you need to revert. So going back to what I said before about if there's a way that you can slowly, if you can test before you switch over fully to your new site, 10% of your traffic going there and see how it performs, so you know whether or not you want to actually go through with the site update. You should do that, but if you do you just quickly switch over to the new site, you find out it doesn't convert as well, which you absolutely should be looking at the conversion rate of the new site to the old site when you switch over, so you know as quickly as possible that new site actually did follow through with a higher conversion rate. Because if it doesn't convert as well, you're basically stupid for not reverting back, because you're going to lose money forever after that change. Even if you have invested big dollars in that site, it's got to be able to perform differently. Otherwise, you're going to be taking a hit on how much money you're going to make forever just for your ego, not to get bruised over the fact that you spent all this time and money on a website and you basically got ripped off. The site doesn't perform any better than it did before. And so, but if you switch over to the new site and then you have to revert back, it can be, as my point was here, I was trying to make 60 to 120 days more for them to figure out that the old site is actually as good as the old site ever was, even though I found if you revert back, it's more like just 30 days for them to figure out the old site is the old site, or the old site, basically you switched back to the old site and they can use all the data that they had on the old site already to run your campaigns with, in other words, okay? That makes sense. So usually, more so it's like 30 days, but still, it may take you have bad performance, you figure out in 30 days the site doesn't convert, the new site doesn't convert as well as the old one, now you revert back. It's still gonna take 30 days for their algorithm to readjust and figure out that everything's fine. This is the old site. We can go back to using the old data that we have stored up about when your old site was promoted. So in other words, I'm just trying to mention here, if you switch back to the old site and you say, well, why is it working still? Anytime you make any changes to your campaigns at all, there's going to be a negative effect as their algorithm tries to reevaluate how to run your campaigns. If it could be as simple as a budget change that'll happen, which is why you want to make as little changes as possible with your PPC campaigns at all times, and the ones you make is done by someone that knows what they're doing and has like a 90% chance of knowing if they put that change in, it actually will result in better results. So it will always make up for the negative of having to go through the algorithm relearning whatever setting change you just made. That respectively, anyway, with that, when you revert back, the algorithm is give it 30 days. And even if not, maybe it might be up to 120 days after that for them to readjust again to getting back to the old site, even though they should know what the old site is. My point is, a lot of times, most of the time, it still will take them a good 30 days at least to kind of normalize all the the results that you had before you made the site, when you switch the site over. If you're expecting that, it's not going to, when you get back the old site back on, it's not going to be instantly the way that it was. If you're lucky, and usually it'll take 30 days to go back and at least revive the old results you had. If you are not lucky, and some other 10, 20, 30% of you guys might have to wait 60 to 90 days after we revert back just to revive the old results you had before you made the new site live on your web server. So respectively, that's the deal with that too. Now, I've got a chart here that kind of spells out how much the results are going to be affected by you switching over your site, and what you can expect from that. I didn't mention before, I was trying to remember what else I was going to say about the effect on the results you're going to have. Respectively, the more your site kind of changes, the more you're going to notice the cost per click going up to maintain the same impression share, a number of impressions your ads was getting already, right? If you update the site, the design's radically different, okay, than it was before. That's going to have a bigger impact than if you made a smaller change on the design. If the site change has where the URL that you're pointing people to is different, it's going to have an even bigger negative effect on your results than if the URL was the same. With that being because if it's a new URL, the algorithm's going to think there's no chance that this is not radically different than what it was before, because nobody usually switches what URL they're taking people to unless this page really is completely different. Whereas if, of course, like I said, you're still sending them to the same URL, it might think there's a chance that the page is, basically the same. Then it'll, kind of assume that more. But the main thing is, if we had a situation where the website was switched over to Shopify from another e-commerce platform that the client wanted to move away from. The visual site design was all the same, but because the URLs were different, there was a huge impact on their results, and way more than if the URLs would have stayed the same. Because I've done that as well, where the site visually was not exactly the same, but very, very close for a roofing company, and respectively, the URLs were the same. The impact was less, like half as much as the guy that, which was a paint company, who switched. The site design was exactly the same, and the URLs were different. It had a way worse effect, like twice as bad as the roofing company, which had a little bit designed differently, a little bit different design, close to the original design, but the URL stayed the same. So just the fact that the URLs change itself might double the negative, effect on what your numbers are going to come out as, versus keeping the URLs the same, which is why, if you have the opportunity yet, or before you do your site upgrade, or whenever you do it, try to keep the URLs the same. Sometimes you can't, because certain platforms only force you to have a certain URL structure, which is what the case was with this last guy I was dealing with the paint company, that Shopify has to have like collections in the URL, and that's just how it is. And another platform, wasn't that way. And so they were forced, if they wanted to use that Shopify, they had to update the URLs, and then therefore, the algorithm shit itself a lot more than it should have, given that the site design was similar. Or basically exactly the same, not similar, but literally we tried to make it as pixel perfect as possible on the new site versus the old site, but because the URLs changed, shit hit the fan, short term anyway. It'll always recover again, but you're just trying to help you prepare short term what you can expect. Now, we have a lot of clients here at Guaranteed PPC, been doing the PPC management for clients for a long time now, many years. Everybody updates their site every 3 to 7 years, whatever. And I took a look at a few different accounts and tried to see, in general, on average, what is the effect on the results that they're getting, and how long does it normally take to kind of shake off the effect of changing this site over to something else, so you kind of know what to expect at different stages for your company as well here. And so this chart here shows on the left-hand side, on the x-axis, sorry, that might be the y-axis. I think I got that mixed up. The percentage of effect that the switchover had on our clients' actual profit that the campaigns were generating. On the x-axis here, I have time. So basically, I mentioned usually it's 60 to 120 days before the results really normalize itself. And in reality, it's a little bit longer, but the results are the most of the impact it's going to have will shake itself off for you within 120 days in general. But as I have found when I looked at our past companies' results, respectively, the amount of clicks on the site or landing page that we had, because we have a mix of clients here, but in general, and I narrowed this down to a specific category. I didn't, like, if the person sold a bunch of different stuff, I narrowed it down to like the top category of product or service there, so that my results would be a lot more consistent. But the average of clicks on the landing page from that category in general was about 3,000 clicks per month. And from that, I basically got here about how much the results were negatively affected at 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, 150 days, and so on, for you to kind of see, so you know what to expect when you do an update on your site as well. And this was a mixture of people that had the URLs changed, did not have the URLs changed. I'll give you a direct example where the URLs did change, but the design did not, so you can see how much that will affect you. Also, different competitiveness of different markets. What I can tell you up front is the reason why the amount of time it takes for the results to kind of normalize for yourself is not so much, it's time-based versus clicks-based, and how I've got my data set here, set up for you, mainly because in markets where you're going to have a lot of clicks, that's probably a lot more competitive of market. If the market's more competitive, in general, the results that you get in terms of the negative dip in results, the cost per click going up to get the same amount of impressions, and the actual conversion rate will go down from the fact that the system does not know as well what exact traffic to send to you. They may have the same keywords, but which people that search for those keywords should they actually send you, that'll work good for your new site. Respectively, if it's a smaller niche and it's less competitive, it takes less clicks. But respectively, if it's more competitive, but if it's less competitive a niche, it takes less clicks for them to kind of figure out how that site performs, and the impact on your results will be less. Whereas in a more competitive niche, it'll take more clicks for them to figure it out, and it'll have more of a negative impact, as I've witnessed looking at these numbers, which I've kind of knew the whole time as I've been doing this for a long time. I've noticed, respectively, how that, the reason why it is that way is because from Google or Facebook's perspective, if they have somebody there's a bunch of people who want these customers, and they have lots and lots and lots of data on those on those other competitors' campaigns, naturally they don't need your landing page, or they don't need your campaign. So therefore, it would make sense to penalize you more up front, so that they can try to promote their stuff until you've slowly, or more so slowly, figured out, and they figured out that your stuff performs as well as it ever did, because they don't need to rely on your stuff so much. In markets where there isn't a lot of competition, they kind of need your ad, so therefore they don't want to penalize you they don't need to penalize you as much, and they have less choices to do so. But more so than that, the second element to that is, if you're I talked about a roofing company. Essentially, if in a roofing company, a local roofing company, there's only so many searches, and there's only so many different types of customers, and therefore they can figure out faster how ultimately how to it's going to be sending pretty much so the same type of people to your new site, even though it's designed a little differently than if it's a paint product. The variability in the type of people that they could be sending you is a lot different. So they have more to learn about what type of people to send you for like an e-commerce company than they would for a little local service. So in general, it skews that if you're in a less competitive market that has less overall market cap, that they're going to figure it out with less data. But because you have less data, it's still going to take some time to get good 10,000 clicks from your campaign to really know how the thing performs. And if it's competitive, they'll be able to they'll have more clicks to look at sooner, but they'll need more data because everybody else has a lot of data already. So long story short, if you're in a competitive market or non-competitive market, it just kind of works out that you need that 60 to 120 days basically for things the algorithms, Google and Facebook's algorithms in general, to figure out what to do with your campaigns given the new landing page or whatever. And this is all assuming that the site with the data I'm going to show you, this all assumes that your landing page is as good or better, not worse. Anybody who was worse, they reverted. I obviously didn't include that in our stuff. And respectively, with that, I'm going to share with you then how long, in that 60 to 120 days, how long it's going to take, and what you can kind of expect during each sub-segment of that time frame in terms of how much results you can get back, and how quickly you'll be out of it in general, most of the way, or mostly be out of it, and at what time frame. So with that said, So if the effect on your campaign's 100% in terms of what the your profit that you're making from your campaigns as it was before is 100% affected right away, 30 days in, whatever you got in terms of a hit, in terms of your profit you're making from your campaigns, only 80% of it will be there 30 days in. So most of it's there still after 30 days, but you get it's a little less than it was, assuming your landing page again or site is as good as it was before or better. 60 days in, you're still 70% of the negative impact that you had on your campaign seems to be there after 60 days already. So it's still pretty bad for the first 60 days. You're pretty much kind of screwed. Beyond that, you hit day 90. More than half of the effect kind of has dispersed itself for most of the clients that I looked at when I averaged it out. So about 45% of the effect it's going to have on you having the new site, assuming it performs as good or better than your old site, 45% of that effect will still be there after 90 days. 120 days, still about 25% of the negative effect that switching over to the new site or landing page that was going to have to happen to your campaigns for Google or Facebook to reevaluate what you have. 25% of that effect will still be there after 120 days even. So in other words, it'll take a long time for this to really normalize. Beyond, when you get to day 150, it's negligible whether, how much is there or if there's there any at all. But in general, that's the kind of, after 120 days, you're pretty much out of the woods for the most part for everything I looked at. Okay, so the first 60 days are substantially worse than 90 to 120, which you basically only have 30% of the brunt of it in day 90 to day 120, whereas the first 60 days you have 80% of the brunt. So anyway, that gives you a little bit more idea when you make your switch over to your site, what to expect shorter term in terms of that 120-day span versus longer term. The impact from Google in terms of how much you're going to have to pay more per click to get the same amount of impressions like I talked about before, and respectively how much your conversion rates will be affected, not from the potential of your new site, but from Google or Facebook not knowing what traffic to send to your site, given your site is appealing to a different subset of the amount of people that you could be going after. That Facebook, the overall negative impact on your sales is actually less than what you're going to have with Google itself. Same thing with Bing. Because their search engine algorithm has so many more variables, okay? So there's certain keywords where one site will convert well, but another site won't. And they have to kind of evaluate keyword by keyword. Versus on Facebook, yes, there's a lot of other, they really subsegment all their users. If you want to really, put it into perspective, there's a million or millions of categories that their users could fall into. But in general, they kind of narrowed it down to like one stream of traffic, if you will, after a decent amount of period, maybe a couple, 3 years of running your campaign. So when you go to a new site, there's not as many variables to test, if you will, from that campaign like it is with a search engine campaign, as per how things are set up just by default or by nature. So with that, just can't, you at least have that now going in if you're doing Facebook as well. Going back to the case study about the guy that had the paint company, in which the guy, we actually helped them directly with this one this time, switch over to a new site. And with the new site, it was on Shopify. Before they were using another e-commerce platform. And Shopify was much easier to use, more stable. By the way, you should use Shopify if you're doing e-commerce. It's worth the money. It's way better than anything else out there anymore. Even though it might be a little bit more expensive. Usually the website platforms that cost the most are the ones you want anyway, because they're the most stable. They're not going to fail on you. They're most cross-compatible with other things. But when we switched over to Shopify, I told the client, first of all, if you're going to switch sites, you have to be very careful who you hire so that the new site doesn't look different than the old site. And there's a lot of crappy firms out there that'll not what they call make things pixel perfect. It'll be a little bit janky. It'll be not quite aligned the same way. All of that little stuff like that will impact your conversion rate. It just will. And so we helped them physically clone the website, and so that on Shopify it looked basically mirror identical, so that there wasn't a risk that it was done half-assed and the conversion rate won't be as good after doing all that work, which is what you would want to do in that situation. With that said, because like I said before, Shopify has a certain way that their URLs must be structured, their URL structure, to where they have to have like your domain.com/collection/product page name, and instead of just domainname.com/product page name. And so that threw basically every single URL in our campaign, so they had to have a new address. And again, like I said to Google, also to Facebook, they don't know that the websites are identical visually to the other campaign or the other site that you had. So they have to test things. So they just knowing that the code looks different, that they don't know it's similar until they've ran a little bit of data at it. And if it is similar, they'll find it out quicker, because pretty much things will look like it was before fairly quickly in the retesting process. But with that said, the pages look similar, but they were on a new URL. So not only do they obviously think, well, this might be a totally new page, we don't know yet until we try it drive a few clicks at this new page or this new site, but their new URL. So the chances that this is totally radically different than what it was, and also with this potentially might just be a whole new product that they're actually pitching to this person, because if they're going to change the URL, like I said, their assumption is you've got something substantially different that you're doing now that you didn't have before. It may be a totally different offer. In general, they go off the mean. They look at what most of the time would happen in a certain situation. They assume that until their data shows them otherwise. Anyway, website was identical in terms of visually. Obviously the code would be different because it's now on Shopify versus the other platform, and new URLs for everything. They were paying $2.35 a click on Google itself, before the switchover during that same time of year, okay, and to get 84% impression share. Once we made the switch, the cost per click to get that same 83% impression share was closer to $7.16 per click, or $7.16 per click, just to keep it simple. So that was basically right away, okay? How long did it take to recover from that, given that basically they thought we basically threw them a complete curveball. We're promoting something totally different here. At the 30-day mark, I measured it was $5.68 per click that we got to. So substantially less, but still way more than the $2.35 that they started out with. Day 60, it got down to $5.29 per click. Okay, so less, but still very, very high in comparison to what they had before. So basically more than double yet. Day 90, they were at $3.48 per click on average. Okay, so way less, still pretty high. Day 120, they were at $2.70 per click, so still higher than. And then it went on. Basically, it took a good 6 months for the whole thing to kind of completely shake itself out, from the Google really evaluating, okay, really, it looked like something totally different. It wasn't. We figured it out across the board for because you have different landing pages. You got to figure, if you have different landing pages, each landing page, the algorithm has to reevaluate separately, because it's evaluated on each page basis, not the whole site as a whole. A lot of people don't really think about that either, but if you had a computer script that had to evaluate, it would be on a page-by-page basis. So each page has to be evaluated, and it can't. So therefore, it will take longer, because each page has to have so much measurement, if you will. But that gives you a general idea, and this is more information. as a separate case study, if your site looks similar to what it had before, it can still be really bad for you short term, particularly if you have different URLs. So you want to try to stay away from custom URL or new URLs for sure if you can do it. But even then, the results here would be about half of this if they didn't have new URLs, just because the web code is different, and therefore it would still need to assure itself, the algorithm would need to assure itself that the page performs as good as it did before. Like I said, earlier in this video. So instead of, I would expect in another situation, instead of the cost per click jumping from $2.35 per click to $7.16, it would jump from, if we didn't have new URLs in this case, but the design was similar, $2.35 to maybe like $4.60 per click or something smaller, but still a lot. You're always going to have the cost per click go up to maintain the same impressions once you have a radical redesign of the site. Sometimes you'll get away with, most of it going away in 30 to 60 days if you're talking about less being changed, like I said, which is one variable. The other being if you have less competitive market and they don't have other campaigns to rely on to show for their users in that particular ad space for that stream of traffic, you can get out of it sooner. If you're in a very competitive market and you're changing everything, the design's totally different, URLs are different, it can be 3 times as much per click, which means your ROI goes down to 1/3, on top of whatever negative effect you're going to get from the fact that different people with different traits convert differently on your new site. Therefore, whatever traffic they were sending you before isn't optimized for your new site. So you could be talking about, in the worst case scenario, 20% of the sales volume you had right out the gate as soon as that new site's published, even though it converts the same head-to-head with the same type of people that would go to the page per se, not same type of people, but in general, your overall site converts the same. And with that, what could happen if you change the whole site design, use new URLs, and what can happen from that, given the algorithm really does have to find the new traffic that's going to work for you and evaluate that you're from your campaigns that you're going to get the same conversion rate, people like your page as good as it did before, or site as good as it was before. The last thing I'll say about all of this is, given you now see kind of how bad the results can be short term for you when you switch over a new site, particularly as you make a big change to your site, changing URLs as well, and in a very competitive market where there's 10 people who would love your spot already, which in a lot of markets that's the way that it is. Like anything for example, in the printing industry, business card printing, there's 10 people all the time who want those customers. They don't need to push your stuff and take a risk that your page is going to be seen by more people than necessary before they figure out that it's not going to work as good, and they really don't want to run it. The best deal is, even if you have an e-commerce company, if you can use landing pages, it's a great idea, because if you update your site, you don't have to have your campaign ever take a hit. So if you plan on updating your site every 3 years, now you got 4 months every 3 years that your results are going to take a hit on your PPC campaigns. So for me, I use landing pages basically every campaign we work on, because, well, the main thing is with it, we don't want any of the changes on the main site to affect our landing pages, as far as we changed this and then therefore our landing page got that same change, and that change negatively affected our results. We don't want, whether by accident or whatever, we want a firewall between the PPC campaigns and the rest of the site, so that the PPC landing pages are going to be locked in, they're under lock and key, they're not going to change unless I know about it, and that's just it. And then of course, with that, the client updates their site, I don't have to worry about anything if all the traffic's going to the landing pages. Of course, we have to make sure the pages still show up after that, but excluding that, the campaigns won't miss a beat. If you have an e-commerce site, consider having a landing page where you basically, if you just send people to a category page now, consider making a landing page that just looks like the category page. When they click on the links, it just goes to your main site anyway. That way, again, when you update your site, before you, or until you figure out the main website that you updated does better, you don't have to touch your PPC campaigns, so that you only have to update your PPC campaigns landing page, which is a mirror copy of the category page that you sent them to or would normally send them to. Whatever you do is going to make up for the fact that you're going to lose, potentially half of your profits that your campaigns were generating for up to 120 days after you do that big update to your site. So anyway, in general, that's the kind of the whole, thing about updating your site, how your results can be affected, and what type of things affect your results, why they affect your results. If you like this video, I have a ton of other videos on this channel about other PPC strategies, other things to know about PPC to be very good at PPC. If you want to be a PPC sleuth, I highly recommend you check them out. I have a blog at guaranteedppc.com/blog with step-by-step instructions on how to build PPC campaigns the way that I'm here to guarantee our clients results. If you want to be able to learn how to do PPC on a more step-by-step basis, you can find information along those lines there if you're interested in it. If you have any questions about switching your site over, you're going through some chaos with your site now because of that, or planning one, things that you think I should have covered maybe and didn't, leave me a comment below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a comment on this channel, usually within a day or two time, myself. And with that, I think I'll wrap it up with that. Thank you for watching the video. I have another great video with another good strategy coming on it out, and another good strategy on it in another day or two time. I hope to see you there as well.